It's Monday, and that means it's time for another Motivational Monday, and I'm Christopher, one of the pastors here at Urbana-UMC, and I'm here with my friend Alex Tamplin. And Alex is a good friend of mine, and he's been in the area doing ministry for quite a while, and currently you are at Fletcher United Methodist Church.
Right. Yeah. I'm currently the associate pastor at Fletcher United Methodist Church. I've been there for this September would be about 4 years now.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
4 years. That's good time to do some ministry. And you are recently married?
I am, yeah. We, my wife and I had a pandemic wedding. No, we got married in September, so it was like things just kind of started opening back up again, and so it was like kind of perfect. We were able to have our wedding and had our honeymoon. We went to Colorado.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it's beautiful.
Well, congrats.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. So I got to meet Alex probably a couple of years ago when we started talking about our Ignite Youth Conference and just trying to connect with other youth ministers in the area, right?
Yeah.
And so since then, just kind of kept tabs on him and seeing what God's been doing in his life. And so we were talking about ministry and passions and what that looks like in the church and outside of the church. So what are some of your ministry passions, desires? And I know you like coffee, right?
I'm a huge coffee person. So if you're watching this and maybe you know me, if you know me, you know, like, I love coffee. I've been in and out of the coffee industry since like college. I got hooked. I went to a specialty coffee shop when I went to Indiana Wesleyan University. It's called the Abbey, and it like blew my mind, opened my mind up to like a whole new coffee world experience, and still continue to go in ministry. But like I said, I'm the associate pastor at Fletcher, but I also work at a shop called Pettibone Coffee in Dayton, Ohio. So
okay,
yeah.
So if it's like you're ranking your passions, is it like Jesus, your wife, or is it like Jesus, coffee, your wife?
It could be like Jesus, my wife, and coffee. Like,
so right there.
Yeah, and she knows that.
That's awesome. Yeah. So where's your favorite coffee spot?
Man, so we live in Dayton, Ohio. That's hard. I would say where's my favorite coffee shop?
Yeah, if you could go somewhere right now.
Favorite coffee spot in Dayton, it's either Press, if you know Press, or Pettibone Coffee, which obviously I might be a little biased on that. But Purebred in Troy is pretty good too. So shout out to Purebred.
That's awesome.
That's where my wife and I met, by the way.
All right, so you met at a coffee shop, so it's all kind of intertwined.
I knew that she loved coffee, and I loved coffee.
And you love
shot
her.
in her DMs. I was like, "Hey, you want to get coffee?" So
that's awesome. Yeah. Well, so you love coffee and you love Jesus, and I think you were talking a little bit about maybe that can work together somehow too, right?
Yeah. Eventually, my wife and I. I've been brainstorming this idea of like what would it look like to do a missional type coffee experience. Eventually, we want to open up a coffee shop called Bloom. We have this idea of calling it Bloom Coffee Co. Because we believe we love this idea of Bloom because we love everybody has this opportunity to bloom, to live with Jesus, the full to really come out of their shell and live a full life because of Jesus. And so like we want, and I think with the coffee world, I think one thing I see in the coffee world, they do community right. I mean, you go to a coffee shop and you see, man, like there are all different types of people sharing a cup of coffee together, and it's incredible. And I don't know, man, coffee just brings so many types of people together and creativity and just over anything. And so like, what would it look like to do church in a coffee shop without calling it church per se, right? To do community, to share Jesus, to share the experience and relationship of Jesus. And so yeah,
it's exciting. Well, that's an awesome dream. And that kind of comes out of this idea. You said that we were talking earlier about what God has been kind of showing you lately, and which was,
over this past year, I mean, obviously we went through this a lot.
Pandemic, right?
This pandemic, right?
Yeah.
We went through a lot. We went through a lot with that, and I think one thing God's been laying on my heart per se is like, you know, there's going to be people who've stepped outside of the church, four walls of the church, and who may not come back to these four walls of what we call the church to worship on Sunday mornings. And there's good to that, and there's bad to that. But how can we as pastors, and how can we as individuals or people who call themselves Christ followers or Christians, how can we think outside the four walls of this building and be the church outside of these four walls? You know what I mean? I think that's, in these next couple of years, I think that's definitely something the church is going to have to think about, is like, you know, how can we be the church in the world and not just invite people, hey, come back to church on Sunday mornings. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, last year worship experience looked very differently.
Yeah.
Most of us were online, and if we were in person, some of us were spread out. But now we're seeing, even a few months later, when things seem to be back to normal, that there are still a lot of people not coming back.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean there's a lot of people who are uninterested in God either.
Right. Yeah. Maybe they're just looking for something else, seeking something else.
Yeah, and I think there are, we were talking about this as well, that there are the idea that we just want to get back to normal, right? And so once we get our pews filled back up again, we can stop doing online church, and we can stop with social media, and we can stop doing some of those things, right?
Social media, I mean, everything. Well, I just mentioned right before we had this video, right? Like, right before we started this, we were having a conversation. I'm like, man, I once heard a pastor say, before everything started, or before everything shut down, we want to go through this. We don't want to get through this pandemic as a church and be like, man, we made it through that, and that's it. We can go back to normal. We can just be the church that we were being before. No, we want to get through this, and we want to become a better church because of that. And because of so many people maybe that aren't in seats Sunday morning, but they do have their iPhones and they're on Facebook. They do have their iPhones and they're on social media, teenagers and TikTok, and I mean, you name it. There's all kinds of apps that are exploding and people are joining them. And so, like, how can we, as Christians, like, I guess, invade those spaces? You know what I mean? Like, and not make it cheesy, but like, be Christ followers on those spaces. Like, utilize them. You know what I mean?
Right.
They're out there, so let's utilize them. And that's one of the ways we're going to do it. Like, get out of four walls and utilize those things.
When I think about the early church, even in America, with we're United Methodist, so John Wesley and some of those guys, and then the circuit riders who would go from town to town, but they would just go to an empty field and preach. They didn't go to a church, and a lot of times they weren't welcome in the church.
How many times did Jesus say, hey, let's go share a meal together?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm sure today he'd be like, hey, let's go grab a cup of coffee together.
That's right, he would.
Coffee now. I'm just kidding.
Well, and then also, when Jesus baptized people or John the Baptist baptized people, it wasn't like you had to go through this class or come to a church and join up, and then then we'll allow you to be baptized. It was very much like, do you want to experience Christ? And if you do, then come.
Yeah, exactly.
And it didn't happen in a building.
Yeah.
But not to say the building doesn't have a purpose.
I was gonna say, let's remember, like, man, the church, the actual four walls of the building has been incredible and is incredible now. There's something so special about also coming together Sunday mornings or coming together as a community and worshiping as a community, being together, sharing our burdens with one another. That can happen in four walls in a church or
for sure. But not to get so tied down to it that we forget that we're called outside.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yep.
That's awesome, man. Well, I know that that's something God's been speaking to me about as well, and I know at our church, things that we've been trying to dream and ask God where and what next, and what that looks like for the next chapter of church. And again, not that we abandoned
Yeah.
what's been good.
Exactly.
But we look to what God's calling us to do more, right? And so that's exciting about coffee and you and what God's calling you to do. And we bless you for that. And
Thanks,
hopefully
man.
God continues to just open that avenue for you to reach those who are far from Him over a cup of coffee.
Thanks, man.
Yeah, so hopefully you're encouraged today. Hopefully you'll think outside the box, outside of your four walls, wherever you're at, on how Christ can use you and call you to cultivate the community around you. And because of that, that's your motivation. That's what God's called you to do. You're motivated. So have a great week. We'll see you next time.